Okay. All right. Welcome back to 101 after the midterm exam. So I'll be grading those, and as soon as those are done graded, you guys will be the first to know what the results of that were. Today may end up being a very short class. The power just went out here, so it may. I'll be on as long as the computer has battery. A couple of things that. Couple of things. So we'll continue our discussion on arrays as much as we can today, but a couple of things that I wanted to talk about that there were some questions related to the assignment that just got posted. So let me go ahead and point out some stuff here. So let me go ahead and share. Where is it? There it is. Okay. So we'll share this. You guys should be seeing the third programming assignment here due in about a week and a half. So due Monday night, and you will have a quiz based on this assignment, just like we did before. Note, I want you to make sure to note the date of the quiz will be, sadly, it'll have to be New Year's Eve on that Thursday. At your lunch break time. I want to make sure to give the 2 days period. I think I was actually planning to do this Wednesday. New Year's Eve isn't Wednesday. I think it should be the 30th of September, or 30th of December. I'll make a decision about whether or not it'll be because the 31st will be right after this class will meet. Which I think was why I was thinking that would be the date. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I think it's because it'll be right after this class meets, so you should still be here. Okay. Now, a couple of things. One is, so this was going to be us testing your ability to be able to understand how arrays are passed to methods, how we can pass arrays to methods. So now the information for like our category information, our quantity information, and weight, that's not going to be entered by the user anymore. We're not going to ask them for that information. They're going to input that information one by one. We're not doing that anymore. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pass arrays of categories, quantities, and weights to the method, and the method will use that. That way we don't have to ask them for that. Okay, so we'll pass a string array of the names of the categories, an integer array for the number of each item. So like if the first item, so I'll show you on the code, the example there. If the first item is quiz, quantity will be the representative of how many quizzes are there. And then the weight will be the total weight that all of the quizzes should count towards their final grade. Okay. Capitalize will change. So before, capitalize took a string and returned a string that was the first letter capitalized and every other letter lowercase. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pass an array of strings to a capitalized method, and for each value in the array we're going to change it to that new value, to that capitalized version. You can use your original capitalized method. You can call it through here using what we talked about. We called this method overloading. Okay, you can call your previous capitalized method from this one if you want. In fact, that would make things very much more simple for you if you did it that way. Okay, so basically here, notice this, I'm calling the capitalized method with an array of items, right? And for each one, I'm taking it and I'm capitalizing the first letter and lowercasing everything else. Notice its return type is void. It doesn't return anything. It changes the values in the array. Okay. All the other methods, there's no requirement to change those other methods in any way. Okay. Some examples here. So here, remember, we're not asking the user for this information anymore. We're just putting it into an array and we're going to pass it to the course grade method. the quantity. So here we see 4 quizzes, 3 homework assignments, 1 midterm exam, 1 final exam. The quizzes count for 10%, the homeworks count for 20, the midterm counts for 30, and the final counts for 40. This is just an example. Let me point out, one of you asked about the size of how many categories there would be. Can we assume there will be 4? No, do not assume there will be only 4 categories. I will let you assume this. You can assume that the size of category, the size of quantity, and the size of weight will all be the same. What that means is that I'm not going to give you 5 categories but 4 quantities, okay? Because that should generate an error, and I could have done that, but I'm deciding to go ahead and let you guys assume that we will give you, if we give you 6 categories, there will be 6 quantities and there will be 6 weights, okay? Let's see. Again, I use this code for all of the examples below except for the error ones. So what happened was I said, okay, I want to enter all grades. So it goes through and what it says, give me 4 quiz grades, give me 3 homework grades, give me 1 midterm exam, give me 1 final. Once I've entered all those values, then I can say, okay, show me what the grade information is. So it shows the average for quizzes, the average for homework, the average for midterm, the average for final, calculates an overall grade, gives me a grade letter, a GPA points, and a status. Notice this does not exit the system. I'm not done yet. I see what the student's grade is. And maybe I said, well, you know what? Actually, I should change a grade because I should change one of their individual grades. So then what I can do is I can say, okay, 2, change a single grade. Okay, what type of grade do you want to change? I want to change one of their homework grades. So which homework do you want to change? Because there's 3 of them, right? So I change homework 1. The grade for homework 1 was 65, right? That's what I put in over here was 65. I'm going to change it to an 80. Now I see that the grade values have changed. Notice their homework average before was 70. Now that I've changed the grade, their homework average is now 75. What is their overall grade? It's also been changed by a point as well based on the calculation. And they still pass. They still have a BB, so it didn't change their letter grade. Okay. Finally, entering 0 should exit the system. If I enter a 0 here, I say thank you and exit. If I enter an invalid choice, something that's not 1, 2, 3, or 0, if I enter a negative number or anything above 3, it should tell me that's an invalid choice and continue. It doesn't exit the system just because they put in a wrong number. Okay. Some other invalid possibilities. If they enter an invalid category, right? So they've entered quiz, homework, midterm, final, and they say 5. That's an invalid choice. We go back to the main menu. Okay. We don't go back to the category. Here, their invalid choice is outside of the range of homework assignments. They wanted homework assignment 4, but there was only 3. Invalid choice. Again, we go back to the main menu. All right. Some other possibilities. Now, there are possibilities that we pass invalid values in the arrays. So if we give them a negative quantity, if we give them a negative weight, if we give them a weight that adds up to more than 100 total. Notice this adds up to 150. This doesn't add up to 100. All right. We display a message and we don't even go into the system at all. We don't give them the menu. We just say, hey, that's an invalid quantity. That's an invalid weight. Okay. And we just exit. Okay. Again, make sure that you test your program. Do not rely only on this example. Okay, use examples where categories, where we give 5 categories, 6 categories, where we give 2 categories. Okay, use those examples to help you test your program. Okay, also names like quiz, homework, midterm exam, final exam, those aren't automatically given. We could give other names for those things. What if instead of homework we said assignment? Oh, there's a little echo. Okay. What else? Okay. Let me add this. You can assume that there will be at most 6 categories. Okay. There will be some number of categories from 1 to 6 that will be given. Okay. Is there anything else that you guys asked? I'm trying to think if there's anything else you asked that was important. I don't remember. Okay, oh, and you can assume that we will have no more than 10 of any item. So quantity, there won't be any value greater than 10 in the array. Okay, so there won't be more than 6 categories. We won't give more than 10, for example, quizzes if we were doing that, right? So we won't have more than 6 categories. We won't have more than 10 of any individual item. Okay. Yeah, so that should help you. You are free to do this assignment however you want. If you want to use stuff that, like one of you guys asked about using array list, you're free to do that. But know that we will pass arrays to your method. So you'll have to change that from an array to an array list. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, so I think that should clear all that up. I don't think there's anything else I needed to say about that. Yeah, okay. Oh, one thing I do want to point out too, I do remember now. You're not required to have a main method. If you don't want to have a main method in your program, you don't have to. I suggest that you write some type of main method to be able to test your code and change these values and do different things with them to make sure that it works well. But if you have a main method in your program, that won't be counted against you in any way. It just won't be looked at. Okay. So I encourage you to have a main method, but you are not required to have one. All right. Okay. Let's see. Back to our. Let's see. I'm going to switch over to a different network because our power just came back. Okay. All right, so let me share the slides. Where are we? Where did we leave off? Let's see. All right, so we did this example where we left off about reading 100 numbers, computing the average, and finding out how many were above the average. So there's some other examples of things we can do. We can have a deck of cards where you might have like 52 cards, and each number in the deck represents a suit and a value. So if we look at it like this, something like this. So if we start out with the numbers 0 through 51, where each value in the array is whatever the I value is. So if we say the first 13 are some particular suit, the next 13 or the next suit, the next 13, the next 13. All right. So then we can figure out what suit something is by doing integer division by 13. So if whatever our value in the deck is, if we divide by 13, if it's a 0, it's a spade. If it's a 1, it's a heart. If it's a 2, it's a diamond. If it's 3, it's a clubs. And then we can do the modulo operator by 13 to determine the value of the card, right? So if we do modulo 13, right, then all of these values will be the values 0 through 12. All of these values will be the values 0 through 12. All of these will be 0 through 12, and all of these will be 0 through 12. So if we see an example over here, if we do a shuffle operation on the array, which I think we looked at that before. If we look back up here, random shuffling, we do this on the array. What happens? We get something maybe that looks like this. And we look at the first, let's say the first 4 cards, for example. So 6, card number 6 is 7 because 6 modulo 13 is 6, and we add 1 to it because we could get 0 and we want to add 1 and make that the ace. 2 would be 2, 3 would be 3, and so forth. And then up to 10, the 11 would be jack, 12 would be queen, and 13 would be king, right? And that's just one way to do it. That's not the only way. But 6, right? So 6 modulo 13 is 6, add 1 is 7, all right? 7 divided by 13 is 0 in integer division, so it's a 7 of spades. All right. Then same thing here. 48. This actually should be 6 divided by 13, not 7. That's a typo. So card number 48. 48 modulo 13 is 9. Add 1 is 10. So now we got the 10 of something. 48 divided by 13 is 3. So it falls into this range. It's the 13 of clubs. Sorry, the 10 of clubs. All right. And so forth. So we can see how we can do that. Yeah. Again, divide by 13 gives us the suit because it's one of 4 suits. Modulo 13 gives us a value. 0 becomes the ace, 1 becomes 2, right, all the way up to 9 becomes the 10 value, 10 becomes the jack, 11 becomes the queen, and 12 becomes the king. I think it bears repeating again. This is not the only way that you could do this. You could do the suits in any orders you want. You could do the values. You could do the values where 0 is king and 1 is ace. You can do however you want. Okay. You could also do, instead of divided by 13 and modulo 13, you could do divide by 4 gives you the value, and modulo 4 gives you the suit. All right, so you could group them that way. There's all kinds of different ways that you could do. You could represent a deck of cards using an array of integers. Okay. Lotto numbers is another thing. I don't encourage anybody to play the lottery. I think it's a waste of money. It doesn't help. It's just personally, some people like playing it. They do it for fun. My dad does. To each his own. You can play it if you want, if you're old enough. I don't think that it's wise, but everybody. But it does make for good programming problems. Lotto numbers. So we might say, okay, I want to pick some tickets, and let's say maybe it's you pick 10 numbers, all ranging from 1 to 99. And what you could do is you could say, okay, I'm going to read in a file. I'm going to read in a file that has a bunch of tickets in it, and I want to see on all those tickets, like, are all 99 numbers covered somewhere in the tickets? So we could have a Boolean array from 0 to 98 that represents 1 to 99, and as we find a ticket with a certain number in it, we just change the value in the array at that spot to true. We don't have to check what it is already, right? So if we look at the example, actually I don't think, let's see, I don't think the example has a file. That's the wrong one. Where are you? Let me see. Oh, it's the... Oh, it's getting numbers. Yeah, okay. Oh, it does it using a user interface in the example. If you look on the examples that are on the shared folder, it uses a user input to get the numbers. So we may look at that example. That would be a good example for us to look at, I think. Okay. All right. Now, one thing that I want to do this using the whiteboard. So I'm gonna stop sharing the slides, and I'm going to I'm going to share the whiteboard instead, because I think this is important for you to see how this works in action. Where's my whiteboard? Okay, well, I guess I got to do it this way. All right, so this was, oh, this, I know what this is, okay. Okay, so arrays are what we call contiguous data. All right. So if we think of, like, let's say let's have a variable. We'll just give a name that we've used a lot here, you know, something like sum or total, right? Whatever. Now, when we create a variable, let's say it's an integer. What happens is that in memory, and this is how memory is done, right? Right. Bunch of different locations here. Now, each of these has an address, and we'll give this the address 1000. Okay, it's actually a hexadecimal 1000. Okay, and an integer is 32 bits, which is 4 bytes. So the next address will be like 1004. The next address will be 1008. Okay, now let me draw it in a slightly different color so that you guys can see it better, so they can make a little bit more sense. Now, what happens is we create this variable. Let's call it sum. Okay. Now, what happens is that we declare that sum has an address, and we'll give it 0x1000. So what we're saying is that when the program uses this variable called sum, go find out what's in here, what's in the address 1000. Okay, and whatever the value there is, if I'm using it for on one side of the equal sign, so like if I'm saying, well, I'll use it on both sides and say, let me do it this way. Sum equals sum plus 1. Okay, now let's say that sum has the value of, let's just make up a value 3. Okay, now what's going to happen is it's going to say, what's sum's address? 1000. Go look in that spot and see what's there. So replace this with what's in that spot. So then this will say, okay, this is now 3. Okay, then it will do my arithmetic, my addition, 3 plus 1, and it'll say, okay, this is 4. And then it will say, now take 4 and put it into whatever this points to. So then it'll go back again. It'll say, okay, where does this point? This points to this location. So take this and put it into there. So it'll say no longer 3, but 4. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm getting into this is because arrays are slightly different. Okay. Now, if we were to say, okay, we're going to create an array. My handwriting is terrible, and I apologize so much for that, by the way. We're going to create an array. We'll just call it we'll call it ARR, array. It's an integer type. And let's say that it's an array of size, let's just say it's an array of size 3. Okay. Now, what'll happen is that for this array, it will be given an address, just like the variable up here. 0x. Let's give it the next address in space there, the 0x1004. Okay. Now what happens is that it says, okay, I'm going to start here, and I'm going to reserve these next 3 spots, right, for my array. So now array points to this spot. Array of 1 points to the next spot. Array of 3 points to the next, of 2, points to this spot. Okay, so now let's just give it some random values. Let's give it 4, 5, 6, for example. Okay. Now, sometimes we think, okay, I want to copy that first array into a second array. Okay, I want to copy it to another location, to another array, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that second array as a, so let's say, for example, I was trying to take my arrays for that course grade program that we're creating, that we're putting together, and I want to take the categories like quiz and homework and midterm and final, and the quantities, 4, 3, 1, 1, and the weights 10, 20, 30, 40. I want to take all of those arrays and I want to copy them into a new course, the CSE 102 that's coming up in the spring. Because I don't want to have to go through the process of writing all that code out again. I just want to copy them into new arrays. So I might think, well, here's what I'll do. I'll take, and let me give you another color even. I might say, hey, let's do this. Let's do array 2 equals array 1. There's no 1 over here. Okay, so I might say, okay, take this and copy it over into here. Now the problem is, though, is that unlike variables, when I use an array like this, I'm actually accessing this part right here. So what that means is I will create an array, call it array 2. It will have an address. Okay. It will have the same address as this. Okay. All right. So it will copy the same address into here. So now when I access array 2 at 1, for example, at index 1, and I say, give it a new value of 10, what's going to happen? It's going to go to this address. It's going to say, go to this position, go to the next position, add 1, so go to the next memory position, and change this value to 10. Okay. Have I changed the value in the second index for array 2? Yes. In the second position for array 2? Yes. But I've also changed it for my first array as well, because they both point to the same thing. Okay, so we cannot copy just the values this way. What happens is we actually copy 2 different pointers to the same thing. Okay. All right. I hope that's kind of clear. I wanted to draw that out so you can understand how this works. This will become also very important next semester in 102 when you find out that objects do the exact same thing. Okay. Objects have memory addresses that point to something in memory. And so we have to be very careful when what we want to do is we want to copy the values, but create a new array of the same values as a baseline that then we can change some stuff. Okay. This doesn't just change. This doesn't just copy the contents. This actually makes a second variable that array variable that points to the same two things. So if I take an arrow here, it points to this. If I take an arrow here, it also points to the same thing. Okay. All right. So again, if we have a list 2 and a list 1, before this assignment is executed, list 1 points to its contents, list 2 points to its contents. After this, we said take list 1, whatever it points to, and make list 2 point to that same thing. So it's not just copying the contents of list 1 into list 2. I guess we're back. It looks like the internet had a hiccup on us here. I don't know what the last thing that was said was. I don't know what the last thing you heard was, but the point I was trying to make is that this does not just copy the contents of list 1 into the contents of list 2. This actually makes list 2 point to the same thing that list 1 points to as well. So we have two different array variables both pointing to the same thing, so it's kind of redundant. It's not what we really intended to happen, probably in most cases. One question you might be saying, well, what about this? We can't get to this anymore. We can't get to list 2 anymore. And you're right, it's gone. Nothing. If no variable points to it, we can't get to it anymore. And back in the old days, right, when I was your age, what would happen is a lot of times this stuff is stored in memory, in RAM, in the what is it called? Volatile memory. It's the fast memory that for those of you who like to play video games, like to play computer games, you need a lot of RAM, and it's because it's fast, and so there's a lot of graphics involved and stuff. What would happen is stuff like this would just get stuck in RAM, and it would be tying up memory positions, and but not really used anymore. And what would happen is the more that the RAM got used up and it couldn't get used for other things, it would slow the computer down, right? It would slow things down. So if you've ever seen a meme or seen in a TV series show or a movie or something where the character that knows about computers, the character says, have you tried turning it off and back on again? Usually what that was about was clearing out that RAM and freeing up that RAM space so that the computer would be fast again. These days with Java, we have something called garbage collection, that when at runtime, when the computer realizes that there's information out here in RAM that's no longer being used, it will free that up and allow other programs to use it instead. Much better day we live in now. Okay. So you might say, well, wait, how do I copy arrays then? If I can't just take something like this, a very simple thing like this, but I want to copy list 1's contents into list 2's contents, how do I do that? Well, you could loop through. Question? All right. Yep, exactly, Alper. That's what is right here. You could use a loop. Now, we need to go ahead and make the target array be the same size as the source array. All right, and then loop through and value by value, take the value from the source array and put it into the target array. So if we look at what's going on here, I'm going to pull back up the whiteboard for a second. And I'm going to actually squeeze it down a little bit because I want you to see. So here we have the target array, source array. Notice that now instead of accessing directly this and taking this value and putting it into here, Now what we're doing is we're saying, okay, I want to take these, let's say these 3 positions. And let's say this points to here now, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take what's in this first position and I'm going to copy it into this first position. Then I'm going to do that with this, and we'll use the old value here of 5 for simplicity purposes. And then we'll take this and move it into here, make it 6. So now we've copied one by one the values from this array into this array. Okay, there are other possibilities. There is the array copy method we can also use. This one's a more dynamic than this, because in this example we just showed here, we would have to just copy the entirety of the array. But here, we can actually take a source position and a target position where we don't have to copy the whole array if we don't want to. So the length tells us what, how many of the values from this array do we want to copy. This tells us what starting position we want to go from in the source array. This tells us what starting position we want to start at in the target array. Okay, so we can actually copy portions of the array into this, or we could copy this entire array into some portion of this array. Okay, so either one, they're both fine. You can either do a loop yourself if you just want to copy the whole thing every time. You could also use this array copy utility. Okay. You know, before we get to passing arrays to methods, let's take our break now, because I feel like we've gone through quite a bit here in the first hour. So let's take our break now. We will come back at 10:25 to continue our discussion on arrays and how we pass them to methods. Okay.